Welcome to your deep dive. Today, we're going to Marion County, Florida, back in 2011. We're looking into the murder of 15-year-old Seth Jackson.
Wow.
We've got a really intense stack of source material for this one. Police interviews, investigator reports, court transcripts. It's a story that's, well, it's both shocking and sadly all too real.
Hmm.
What we're going to try to understand here is how this seemingly average group of teenagers could end up committing such a brutal act.
Yeah. You know what's fascinating about this case is how quickly it escalated.
Yeah.
It started as a simple missing person report, but within days it transformed into a murder investigation.
Hmm.
We'll see how seemingly insignificant details, a mother's intuition, and even a bit of luck help piece together this complex puzzle.
Okay, so it all begins on a Monday morning. The Marion County Sheriff's Office receives a call from Seth's mother. He hasn't come home, and she's convinced something terrible has happened.
Right. At first it seems like a typical teenage runaway situation.
Uh-huh.
But then an anonymous tip comes in that Seth was shot the night before. Suddenly, it's a whole different ballgame.
Totally.
Yeah.
So the investigators start digging, and they quickly focus on Seth's ex-girlfriend, Amber, and her friend, Charlie. They both claim they saw Seth the previous night and even heard what they thought were firecrackers. But their stories are full of holes and inconsistencies.
Exactly. The detectives pick up on those inconsistencies right away.
Right.
There are these weird details, things that don't quite add up. They decide to bring in more of Seth and Amber's friends for questioning, hoping to get a clearer picture of what really happened that night.
And that's when things take a dramatic turn. One of the teens, Kyle, Amber's half-brother, breaks down and confesses to his mother that he witnessed Seth's murder. His mother, horrified, immediately calls the police.
Talk about a game changer.
Wow.
With a potential eyewitness, the pressure is on to find Seth and uncover the truth. The investigators separate the teens, Amber, Charlie, Kyle, and another friend, Justin, and begin to meticulously dissect their individual stories.
Yeah. Kyle's interview is particularly revealing. He tells the police about a plan to teach Seth a lesson because of bad blood between Seth and Amber's new boyfriend, Michael Bargo.
Right.
Seth and Michael had gotten into a few fights, and Michael, being 18 at the time, felt humiliated by a younger boy getting the better of him.
It's a classic case of teenage jealousy and bruised egos mixed with a thirst for revenge. And this wasn't just some spur-of-the-moment brawl either.
No.
Kyle tells police Michael bought a gun specifically for this attack.
Mm-hmm.
He intended to use it.
So here's how their plan unfolded. Amber lures Seth to Charlie's house under the pretense of reconciliation.
Right.
They even have text messages to back this up.
Oh, yeah. Remember, we're talking about 2011 here.
Yeah.
Social media and texting were already part of daily life.
Yes.
So these digital exchanges became crucial pieces of evidence for the investigators.
Right. And all the while, Michael, Kyle, and the others are waiting inside, armed with sticks and that gun. It was an ambush, plain and simple.
Yeah. But here's a detail from the police reports that always gets me. Seth actually managed to escape during the initial attack.
Really?
Ran outside, desperate to get away.
He's literally running for his life.
Sadly, it wasn't enough.
Oh, no.
Kyle describes how they chased Seth down, dragged him back into the house, and that's when Michael shot him. Multiple times.
It's just the thought of what Seth must have gone through in those final moments is unimaginable. But the horror doesn't end there, right? In a panic, the teens decide to try and cover up their crime. They build a bonfire in the backyard and attempt to burn Seth's body.
Yeah, it's like something out of a horror movie.
Totally.
But as we'll see, reality is often much more disturbing than fiction.
Yeah.
The fire doesn't completely destroy the evidence, and the teens are left with a horrifying dilemma.
So they collect what's left of Seth's remains, weigh them down, and dump them in a nearby quarry. It's chilling to think about the level of desperation and depravity that fueled those actions.
And just when you think it can't get any more twisted, another layer of this story unfolds. One of the teens' parents gets involved in the cover-up, helping dispose of the body.
Oh, wow.
It's a tangled web of deceit and desperation. And at the center of it all is a 15-year-old boy whose life was cut tragically short.
So we left off with a chilling picture of what happened to Seth and the lengths these teens went to in order to hide their crime. Now let's shift our focus to the legal battles that followed. We've got trial transcripts here, and what struck me was how much the prosecution's case relied on the testimony of the teens themselves.
Yeah, that's always a challenge in cases like this. You're dealing with young people who are scared, confused, and often trying to protect themselves. Their stories are full of contradictions and finger pointing.
Right. It makes you wonder how the prosecution even began to sift through all that and present a convincing case to a jury.
It's a meticulous process. They had to carefully weave together the physical evidence, the bloodstains found with luminol, the gun, the remains found at the quarry,
Hmm.
with the most credible parts of the teen's statements.
Wait, back up for a second. Can you explain how luminol works? I remember seeing that on crime shows, but I'm a little fuzzy on the science.
Sure. Luminol is a chemical that reacts with the iron in blood, even if it's been cleaned up or is invisible to the naked eye. It creates a faint blue glow that helps investigators detect traces of blood at crime scenes. In this case, luminol helped reveal bloodstains at Charlie's house, even though the teens had tried to clean up the scene.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. Almost like something out of science fiction.
Yeah.
But going back to the trials, I noticed each of the teens was tried separately. That must have added another layer of complexity to the legal proceedings.
Absolutely. Prosecuting a case like this is like a high-stakes game of chess. The prosecution had to make strategic decisions about who to try first, what evidence to emphasize, and how to anticipate the defense's arguments.
So let's start with Amber Wright. The prosecution portrayed her as the mastermind behind luring Seth to his death. What was her defense strategy?
Her lawyers tried to downplay her role, painting her as a young and naive girl who was manipulated by Michael Bargo.
Okay.
They argued that she was, blinded by her feelings for him and wasn't fully aware of the extent of his plan.
But didn't the prosecution have those text messages between Amber and Seth, the ones where she's clearly urging him to come to the house that night?
All those text messages were damning. They established her intent, her knowledge of the plan, and her active participation in setting the trap. The prosecution argued that without Amber's manipulation, Seth would never have walked into that house.
Right, and the jury agreed. Amber was convicted of first-degree murder and is currently serving a life sentence. It's hard to believe someone so young could be capable of such calculated cruelty.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder that age is no barrier to evil. But this case also highlights how technology can play a crucial role in modern investigations. Those text messages became a digital trail, a virtual confession that sealed Amber's fate.
Okay, so what about Charlie Alley, the girl whose house it all happened at? Didn't her initial conviction get overturned?
Yes, her defense successfully argued that she had ineffective counsel during her first trial. Essentially, her lawyer didn't do a good enough job representing her, which is a violation of her right to a fair trial.
So what does that mean practically? Did she get a new trial with a different lawyer?
It can go a few different ways. In Charlie's case, she ended up striking a deal with the prosecution. She pled guilty to a lesser charge in exchange for a reduced sentence and was released after serving 9 years.
That's a pretty big difference compared to Amber, who's still behind bars. It really shows how much the specific circumstances of a case, the legal representation, and the plea bargaining process can influence the outcome.
The justice system is complex, and the pursuit of justice doesn't always result in a clear-cut win or loss. But let's not forget the other key players in this drama. Kyle Hooper, Amber's half-brother, was also convicted and is currently serving a life sentence.
Right. And what about their stepfather, James Havens, the one who helped dispose of the body?
He was initially sentenced to 30 years as an accessory to murder, but his sentence was later deferred. That means the judge postponed his punishment, perhaps under certain conditions like probation or community service.
It's interesting how each person involved, even those on the periphery of the actual murder, face different levels of accountability. It speaks to the legal system's attempts to weigh individual culpability and assign punishments that, ideally fit the crime.
Yeah, it's a constant balancing act, and there's always room for a debate on whether justice was truly served. But there's one more person we need to discuss, Michael Bargo, the one who pulled the trigger. His case is particularly complex.
Right. He was originally sentenced to life in prison, but then that was changed to the death penalty. How is that even possible? Can a sentence like that be changed after the fact?
In some states, like Florida, there's a process for seeking a new sentencing hearing, especially in death penalty cases. In Bargo's case, the prosecution argued that his role as the ringleader, the brutality of the crime, and his lack of remorse warranted the most severe punishment.
So they essentially presented their case again, hoping to convince a new jury that the death penalty was justified.
Exactly. It's a controversial process with strong arguments on both sides about fairness, deterrence, and the fundamental nature of justice itself. But in Bargo's case, The second jury agreed with the prosecution, and he remains on death row to this day.
So we've covered the investigation, the trials, the verdicts, the legal side of this case. But what I keep coming back to is the human costs, the ripple effects that extend far beyond the courtroom.
Oh, absolutely. Cases like this don't end with a gavel bang. Families are left to grapple with unimaginable loss. Communities are shaken to their core. And even those tasked with seeking justice carry the weight of these stories long after the files are closed.
Right. Let's start with Seth's family. To lose a child, especially in such a violent and senseless way, I honestly can't fathom that kind of pain.
There's no roadmap for grief,
Hmm.
especially when it's amplified by the trauma of the crime and the public nature of the case. Imagine having to relive the details of your child's murder through multiple trials, media coverage, the constant reminders of what was stolen from you.
Yeah, we have some excerpts here from Seth's mother's victim impact statement during Charlie Ellidy's sentencing.
Right.
It's incredibly powerful, but also incredibly difficult to read.
Yeah.
She talks about how Charlie will still have a chance to see her family, receive letters, experience life's joys and sorrows, while Seth will never have those opportunities.
It's a raw, visceral expression of the injustice of it all. It highlights the fact that even with convictions and sentences, there's this profound imbalance. The perpetrators, even those found guilty, still have a future, however limited, while Seth's future was completely erased.
Right. And it's not just the immediate family, right? Think about Seth's friends, his classmates, the teachers who watched him grow up. They're all impacted by this tragedy.
Absolutely. A community that once felt safe, familiar, is now overshadowed by this act of violence. There's a collective sense of vulnerability, a questioning of how something so horrific could happen in their midst.
One thing I kept wondering as I read through these documents was, what about the investigators? They're the ones who have to immerse themselves in the details of the crime, interview the perpetrators, confront the darkness firsthand.
Right.
How do they cope with the emotional burden of that experience?
It takes a toll. Detectives, prosecutors, forensic team, these are human beings who are exposed to the worst of humanity. They see the depravity, the senselessness, the pain it inflicts on others. And over time, that can lead to compassion fatigue, burnout, even PTSD.
It really makes you appreciate the dedication and resilience of the people who choose these professions,
Yeah.
who dedicate their lives to seeking justice, even when it comes at a personal cost.
Yeah, they're often the unsung heroes, driven by a sense of duty and a commitment to holding the guilty accountable. Their work is vital, but it's definitely not for the faint of heart.
Right. This case also raises some broader questions about teenage violence, group dynamics, and the role of social media. It's
Mhm.
it's chilling to see how a group of seemingly ordinary kids can become entangled in such a horrific act.
Right. There's often a dangerous mix of factors at play. Peer pressure, the desire for acceptance, the blurring of lines between online posturing and real life consequences.
Yeah.
We see how social media can amplify conflicts, create echo chambers of negativity, and fuel a mob mentality that can quickly spiral out of control.
It's a reminder that we need to be having more open and honest conversations with young people about healthy relationships, conflict resolution, and the very real dangers of online bullying and harassment.
Right.
This case is a tragic example of how seemingly insignificant interactions can escalate into something truly devastating.
Yeah, and it also underscores the importance of recognizing and addressing mental health issues,
Yeah.
both in individuals and within families. Many of the teens involved in this case came from troubled backgrounds with histories of abuse, neglect, or instability.
It's not an excuse for their actions, of course, but it does highlight the need for early intervention support systems and resources to help young people navigate the challenges of adolescence and make healthier choices.
One of the most disturbing aspects of this case for me was a comment from one of the lead investigators. He said none of the teens seemed to fully grasp the gravity of what they'd done. It's as if they were detached from the reality of taking a human life, caught up in this twisted game of revenge and bravado.
It's a chilling thought, and it underscores how easily a group mentality can override individual conscience. How the desire to fit in, to impress, or to avoid being perceived as weak can lead to unthinkable acts.
This deep dive has taken us into some dark and unsettling territory, forcing us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature and the fragility of life.
But it's also a story about resilience, the tireless pursuit of justice, and the importance of learning from these tragedies to prevent future ones. As we wrap up, I'm left with this lingering question: what can we each do in our own lives to make a difference? How can we foster empathy, promote understanding, and create a world where tragedies like this become less frequent, not more? That's something I hope you'll continue to ponder long after this deep dive is over. Thanks for joining us.